Junkie Media would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people who for centuries have cared for and nurtured the Redfern area of Sydney, where we've recorded this podcast. It's an honour to work and create every day on unceded Gadigal land here in Redfern, the birthplace of the First Nations civil rights movement in Australia.
This episode of Little Things has been made possible thanks to the new Dine Out feature by Uber Eats.
Words of affirmation, right? And I'm like, yes, tell me more.
Hugh, that means you too.
What? Yeah.
You have to woo.
Okay.
Yep, that's how we start.
3, 2, 1.
From optimizing how we sleep to literally everything we do when we're awake, the way we care for ourselves has become both a daily practice and a cultural phenomenon. I'm Alice Griffin, and this is Little Things, where we navigate the noise of the self-care economy. This episode, I'm with Sel Nguyen, iconic relationship and sex therapist and the founder of Come Back to Bed. We're chatting about how internet trends tell us how we should view our relationships and their value in 2025, how we then choose to show up in those dynamics, and of course, why her little things are actually kinda the big things. Hi, Sel.
Hi.
Welcome to Little Things. This is so exciting to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Is this your first ever pod?
Not my first ever pod, but my first ever like video style one, you know? So I'm excited to be here.
What I kind of wanted to start with was more about you and how you started, how you got into your career.
God, it's a long story, like about 8 or so years of like proper formal study. So in my role as a relationship therapist and sex therapist. But before all of that was just like a long series of really bad, messy relationships and wanting to kind of correct course on that in the most overcorrecting way that you could in terms of I'm going to master all of this and study it, and I'm going to help everyone else and also figure it out for myself along the way.
As soon as you kind of tout yourself as like the expert of, it's going to be hard for you to still do that in your own personal life, hey?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like there's also like that pressure on myself where I'm like, I know all of these hot tips and cheat codes to relationships, but also, yeah, very much like doing it is still a very different practice. And I think only something even though I've been in this space for like 5 years now, something I've only like really been pushing myself over the last year to actually really follow through and embody and like walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Is relationship and sex therapy for everyone?
Yeah, I'm very much of the opinion that I think most people should, even in the realm of like if it's not therapy, it's also a big avenue for education for a lot of people, particularly for like sex education, because for a lot of us, we don't have much positive, inclusive, pleasure-centered, like access to good education in that realm. So it's at its core even just this space to like learn more about yourself, how bodies work, how relationships work, and to also just kind of like put things on the table and see what fits for you and what doesn't.
If I want to sign up for a session for like to work with you, how long until I have like a sexual awakening?
Oh my God. I wish I could give you a number, right? And I think that's like the first question anyone asks me about sessions. And I'm like, Like I've had people experience it in the first one. I've had people experience it like years into it.
Years
into it, right?
Bloody hell, okay.
And I try not to take that personally as like a, you know, me not doing my job, but in a way of like, because we all come into it at our own pace.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and we're all conditioned to, you know, understand sex and pleasure within our own like social context, and some of that can be really traumatic and harmful and can take a long time to unpack. Years is a long time.
Years is a long time. Yeah. I mean, some people have more obstacles than more other people.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's just like needing that space to just like talk about things. And oftentimes it's like for the first time that they've ever spoken about it with anyone.
We're in the era and age of therapy speak everywhere. I still don't fully understand what attachment styles mean. How do you navigate that within your work?
Within the therapeutic context, we have these phrases, meanings, words that try to encapsulate a very particular dynamic, right? So a common one in terms of like the attachment styles, it's often like the dynamic that we might have of someone who freaks out if they're an avoidant attachment style. They might freak out about having closeness and intimacy, even though they still really want it. But what's happening in a lot of like pop culture kind of social media world is that it's cherry picking these words and then like amplifying it to mean and symbolize absolutely everything, right? So it might just be they didn't respond to my text, they must have an avoidant attachment style, you know, or they ghosted me, they must be avoidant, or they said this in a particular way, that they must be avoidant, and it's not how it works.
Yeah, maybe it's not how it works, but isn't it nice to live in a place where you can be like, I'm going to put that on you and your avoidant attachment style versus having to take that on board?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why people have like taken to it so much, because there's a joy and like a kind of righteousness about like, that's not on me.
Yeah,
that's because you're a narcissist, you know? And I'm like, that, no, right? And like, again, you miss so much of the nuance of like what's actually happening.
I guess it's a way for you to avoid really like looking at yourself and accepting things for how they are and your part to play in those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it can go either way, where it's like we're putting it all on the other person, but I also see it in some ways of like someone just taking it all on themselves, that it's like, because I'm an avoidant attachment style, it means I'm incapable of change. It means I'm incapable of like doing anything meaningful or having any meaningful relationships, and that I'm stuck like this. And that it's all my fault and all my responsibility, and that in itself can be quite crushing. So I can see it kind of going in a few different ways, actually, in terms of it's all on them or it's all on me. And neither are like right or wrong, but it's just like this, what are we actually trying to get at when we do this?
How do you help people work through being so stuck on their like fixed truths about attachment styles, about all these different concepts?
Yeah, I often start at this point of curiosity and like teasing that apart a little bit more. Like, how did you come to learn that, or what does it mean to you? What happens if I provide counter evidence that says that that's not the only truth, you know? But also understanding why people cling so tightly to these ideas, that it's all your fault or it's all my fault. It often serves some sort of function, right? It means I don't have to be vulnerable, or it means I don't have to change, or it means I don't have to like put myself out there. That there's usually some sort of what's referred to as like a secondary gain that we get out of, you know, using these labels and using this kind of approach to relationships.
Brains are such a tricky thing, hey? There's so many different layers as to why we do or don't do things, and it's highly exhausting.
Yeah, it's exhausting and it's messy, but I love it.
I'd love to just hear your immediate reactions when I say bare minimum versus princess treatment.
My first initial thoughts around it is great that we're having this conversation.
Okay.
Right? Like, I think it's about time, and if anything, like finally we're having this conversation about what our standards are and what we expect in our relationships, and I think that's a really empowering and really cool thing for a lot of folks who like historically haven't had that ability to identify what they want or to articulate it or to have someone deliver it. But then I have a lot of strings attached to that come up afterwards of like, okay, but yeah, this is very tricky territory when we talk about relationship standards, when we're just seeing like a 30-second clip of someone's relationship and taking it as instructions, or holding it up as this is how relationships should be.
I want to show you the first princess treatment video that came out in July. Obviously, princess treatment has been a vague term that people have used, but this really re-sparked this conversation around how women should behave in relationships. Obviously, it's a very heteronormative like conversation and trend in general, but how women should behave in relationships and what princess treatment really looks like. Is it a way for like men to kind of control women?
Let's talk about princess treatment if you're at a restaurant and how you interact with the waitstaff and the hostess. If I am at a restaurant with my husband, I do not talk to the hostess, I do not open any doors, and I do not order my own food. So someone had sent me a message a couple weeks ago asking about, like, let's say your husband drops you off and he goes to park the car, what do you do?
So that video obviously sparked like so much conversation around what constitutes princess treatment, which then has gone into this whole other conversation around like bare minimum princess treatment, which is like a little bit more like obviously very kind of different worlds. But it's interesting how things are born and then become like zeitgeisty internet trends and what those roots are. But I guess even the term princess and like what that means and what that connotes as like women should be maybe passive recipients of care and service.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of tension for me in that sense of like these expectations that we have about relationships, and particularly like the communication and like how we negotiate that within our relationships, and how that can be such a tricky thing to navigate. Because I think, sure, if that's what you want in a relationship, great. If like you're willing to negotiate that with your partner, great. But I think recognizing what it actually requires of everyone involved to have a standard of relationship like that, right? That it's not just something that we're automatically entitled to.
So it's really hard because I think there's elements that are quite really traditional and archaic, letting your partner do all these things for you, and someone opening the door for you is just like, that doesn't give me any kind of like nice act of service. So how do you distinguish what is a nice act of service in a equal partnership versus what is a kind of more of a domineering traditional kind of gender role norm? And that's the conversation that I think is like so hard to unpack with this.
Yeah, and to add like nuance into it, right? Because it's such a complex thing in terms of what each of us expect in relationships is wildly different from the next person. But I really like that question of how do you distinguish what is just a nice act of service in terms of like our love language versus something that's, like patriarchal kind of concept that just kind of lingers around. And I think what comes up for me is the distinguishing between, is it a should, right, that we should do these things, versus a genuine want for these things, and teasing that apart, right? Because the shoulds are often coming from that like patriarchal cultural kind of narratives about this is how you should be in a relationship, this is what your partner should be responsible for, without any questioning about it, or stress testing why we got there.
How does princess treatment show up, bare minimum princess treatment show up in a like sexual context?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd actually love for more folks to introduce that sexual kind of layer to it in terms of what are our expectations, right? Because what I find across the board for a lot of clients that I work with is that the bar is quite low in terms of our expectations in sexual experiences, that someone asking what you like or how you like to be touched is considered this really grand gesture and like princess treatment kind of vibe to it. So I think there's actually a lot more that we can actually have in the sexual realm or applying it in that sexual kind of context. In terms of like, what are our expectations? Yeah, and I think there's also that interesting thing that you talk about, like that passive princess treatment kind of role of like, the thing that comes up to mind for me is like pillow princesses who just kind of lie there and take it, which I mean can obviously be great for some people, but yeah, also just like the understanding around why, how do we negotiate that?
Well, I've just advocated to be an equal partnerships in every other context. So I feel like I can't now be like, hello, princess, love it.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's also common for that to be a kind of a switch, particularly from like the romantic side of a relationship to like the sexual side, that we like to have a bit more of a different dynamic to it. So it's okay if you're more on that princess treatment is okay kind of side.
In this specific context.
This very specific context. Yeah.
Okay. Down for that. Why do you think we're so drawn to looking into other people's lives and understanding why, like what their level of acceptable is, and how does that change like what we think?
Yeah, I, for one, think it's just juicy to know, right? And I say that as a therapist who loves learning about people's relationships and like all the goss that comes with that. But also because there's something about the ways that it lets us compare where we are in respect to where everyone else is, right? If someone has this particular standard, we know where we stand, like further or closer on that continuum. So we get this some level of confirmation of like, oh yes, I'm normal. Oh yes, this is okay to ask for. Oh yes, this is within the range of like healthy relationships. And there's something quite comforting about having that reassurance.
But I feel alienated by those videos because I'm like, the stuff that everyone's like, bare minimum. I'm like, what? I would never do that. It's just, it's so, but I think it's interesting. Like it sparks a lot of different conversations and maybe that's okay. You know what I mean? Maybe it's okay that this content is out there because it does spark conversations that like we wouldn't otherwise be having or thinking about. I just worry that then people have a warped expectation of what a relationship should look like and their role to play within that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, like it's, yeah, what I was mentioning around like just this 30-second snapshot of what a relationship is doesn't necessarily mean that that's also what's happening within the relationship, right? Of course, that we can take that content and like post it up for the views and for the likes and the engagement, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that that's
what's happening.
Yeah.
This is a very small snapshot in someone's life and in their supposed like relationship and what happens in their relationship, obviously looking to garner views, clicks, likes and discussions. Often those discussions can be kind of rage baity. And like I have to say, in doing the research for this, it's super funny and fun to like read the comments. People are hilarious.
And like I think that's part of what we also miss in that nuance and that context about what actually happens when the phones stop recording.
Yeah, I mean, beyond this being like super heteronormative, as we said, it's also like a conversation about there's a certain baseline expectation of like wealth, I think, with these conversations too, that people can be like, I want to get my nails done, I get my hair. Like some people are just actually struggling to maintain a relationship amid everything else that they're doing. So I'm also thinking about who these conversations exclude. But also I think sometimes as well, like I'm going to undo everything I've just said and I don't want to like yuck people's yum. I think it's okay to kind of engage with this stuff with a curious lens and not feel like, oh, you like this thing, you think this trend's funny? Well, no, you're an idiot because there's all this other context. Like I think sometimes it is fun to be like quote unquote doted on. And I think the distinction that you've said around like the I as a female should be passive in this context versus like I as a partner kind of want to take a step back for a minute in this context is the difference. And like having that, I think, can help you navigate like what actually you want in a relationship day to day. And that can be really different depending on the person. I think obviously everything happens within a broader context. The first video that I showed you was very much giving kind of like trad wife kind of conservative core. And obviously we're living in a time where we're in more of a right-wing swing at the moment. Obviously that plays out in society and culture and fashion in so many interesting ways. One person who sparked a lot of conversation around their role within the zeitgeist as it relates to trad wife tendencies and like conservatism is Nara Smith, who is an influencer. She lives in Utah, so I would love to see her on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But anyway, that's for another day. She is such a lightning rod. Her relationship, I don't know how much you know about her as an influencer. I'll show you a video in a second, but she's like a model who dates this other model and they have this picture perfect family and she cooks a lot of food from scratch and has gained like a lot of popularity off the back of sharing what could be considered to be like very traditional conservative ideals of what like family and like the core function of relationships looks like. But at the same time, I think obviously like women are constantly projected on. So I think like there's just a lot of interesting kind of commentary and conversation around her. And just when I was thinking about this episode, I had a little look at her page, and she was very handy because she released a video that I think kind of continues this conversation really well. And it is called Unspoken Rules in Our Marriage. And it's a video with her and her husband who've been together for 5 years. And as of the time of recording, it actually has 23.2 million views. So I want to show you it because I'm really keen to get your thoughts.
Unspoken rules in our marriage.
They're very good looking.
So there's a few things. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
You go.
Okay. I always scan the menu at any restaurant we go to make sure that Lucky has options that he likes to eat, and I pick what he's going to eat so he doesn't have to worry about it.
This is true. It's great.
Every time we enter a building or any place, I stand on the left side because
Yes,
Lucky...
it bothers me.
Why? No, the left side so you can open the door.
Yeah, it bothers me if you're on the right because you have to be on the left so I can easily just let you glide in.
Yes.
You know? Okay, one thing I do is I drive no matter what.
Always. I don't even attempt to get in the driver's seat.
I really get bothered when I see girls driving a guy. I don't know why.
Always.
I just don't like it.
You also always fill up the tank. I don't remember the last time I've pumped gas. I probably haven't in years, unless I'm alone.
But to me, those two things are like obvious. You know, I think every
and
guy
trash.
should do that.
I don't touch the trash.
Obviously.
Okay. Immediate thoughts, feelings.
I mean, for it to be a video on unspoken rules, it seems like they had spoken about them quite a lot before the video.
Yes.
I think the part that I kind of sit with is how do we come to deciding that this is what we do for each other?
That's interesting.
Yeah. And like, I mean, of course, being a therapist, I'm like, anything unspoken, I'm like, so we're just built on assumptions that this is something that you might like or something that I should do for you. Which I often see in my practice as a very like big entry door to like resentment later down the track.
Oh, wait, what? So what will lead to resentment just so I don't do it?
Like this idea of like, these are all these unspoken things I'll do for you and hope that you'll notice. And like hope that you will appreciate, even though I'm not talking about it, I'll just keep doing it. And it's often that they hadn't asked for these things. They hadn't noticed these things. But it's something that we like voluntarily like.
Yeah, so you're saying the unspoken rules part, just from a like therapist POV, just sets you up for certain behaviors and habits that aren't necessarily the direction that you want your relationship to go in, or that will get noticed by your partner as something to do.
Yeah. And then that can be quite messy when you're, say, like Lucky and Nara.
Yeah.
5 years down the track and you're like, I've been doing this for the entirety of our 5-year relationship.
I feel that they are so, like, obviously they're putting this out there, as you said, unspoken rules, but very spoken. And obviously are cultivating a very specific kind of brand and are benefiting from it. But in general, I think, yes. I just think with these guys, it's like they would have had many, many conversations about how they want their brand to be and what they want to put forward and out into the world. And that's the part that I find hard is like, I don't even like it. Like, even if it was someone I knew, I'd be like, I hate that for you. And I hate that whole dynamic. But then when it's someone with such a big following and like with such a big community, it's really, really tough because you're like, I don't want to come down hard on an individual who has their own lived experiences and is choosing to live their life. But if you're also choosing to speak to such a big community and audience and perpetuate certain ideals that are really conservative or can be portrayed that way, and that's the message that people will take away from it, then that's like a tough one for me to kind of like think about and critique. And if you look at the comments, like, I was really surprised. I really thought we were all going to be like, wow, this is a bit random. And actually everyone's so pro this, and maybe like she deletes her comments. I don't know. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. This level of elegance and class is so rare in 2025. Beautiful couple. No, go on. This is so wholesome and beautiful.
It's such an interesting thing in terms of like that line of what is an act of service an act of, just care and affection versus this, a should, right? This is something that I have to do or else, there's going to be some potential negative repercussion that we don't do this thing, or like the meaning attached to it that it means that I'm a terrible wife or a terrible partner. And I think that's, this tricky line that we try to walk between of, making these judgments of what is okay and what is not okay.
I think your point is really interesting. How did we get to the point where we communicated that I'm always going to walk on your left? Like that's really intense. Like how did that initial conversation go?
But also if it's this, quote unquote unspoken rule, does that mean that she's just kind of waited or like just had to move around to be on the left side? Like, to just make sure that
shuffling along.
Yeah, that he was always on the right side to open the door.
Yeah.
And like what would happen if like they just happened to be on the other side,
I know. SOS, what do? We just have to like pick her up, put her on that side, like what's going on?
Yeah, it's so much. And there was a thought I had when watching that video and I was like, what else could you like dedicate that brain space to? It reminds me of a lot of the conversations around like beauty standards and how for a lot of women and for a lot of AFAB folks, there's that pressure around beauty as a way to distract us from other like substantial big things in our life, which is like fighting for, like activism, fighting for our rights and being in these really big, expansive spaces that, but because we're distracted by beauty and all of these, like, of course, still like fun things, but it takes up a lot more of our mental real estate that we don't have capacity to think of, fighting for our rights, right?
That's interesting. I have mixed feelings about that because I think what's constitutes as like silly and frivolous is not silly and frivolous and has so much more cultural meaning and context, but at the same time, and like let women have fun, you know what I mean? And let people, let anyone who aren't males have fun. But at the same time, I think obvious, like where are things born from? And I think that's what we're kind of trying to get at this conversation is where are the roots of these things coming from? And then what does it actually mean? How does the concept of unspoken rules marry up with the idea of to be known is to be loved? How do those things coexist?
Yeah, I think there's a difference when like these are these unspoken rules that that the shoulds, that means we should do them, and it means we should do them because that's our obligation, versus the to be known is to be loved is a beautiful phrase that I really enjoy and adore, because it implies choice, right? It implies this choice of we've spoken about it or I've asked for it and this person has shown up for me in this way, and that means a lot. Right, versus the should of, you open the door for me because that's what you should do.
I guess it implies agency and communication. Unspoken rules are very much, this is just how it is, and this is how it is for a number of reasons, whether we set that up or whether society tells us that, versus actively making a choice around how you want your relationship to be. And to be honest, I think that like how you want to conduct yourself in a relationship and how you want to think about your relationship and your role as a partner is something that like I've actually never fully done. And I've been in my relationship for 9 years. Like, so I think it's just like organically happened and has worked out really well, lucky me. But that's so interesting to be like, how do I, and obviously you think about that on like a micro level, but like from a big picture level of like, what are the expectations that I have, or like, what are you kind of just fall into that versus like fully communicating that. And then I guess you have to like communicate when that shifts and changes over time. So I think I've like, luckily enough, landed in a good place without trying super hard to like actively understand and communicate that.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing to like celebrate and to name as well. that, of course, not everyone gets that luxury of like, it just happened to fall together really nicely. But that there's a space for the talking about it when it inevitably does change or like evolve, and keeping up with ourselves and each other when it does, right? Like looping in each other when it's like, why do we do this thing of like me always, for that example, me always being on the left side of the door.
We're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, is it something that we could change? Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about that. Right.
In our session.
Yeah.
Which I'll bring Josh to. Fun.
Guys, we all need more little things to look forward to in the calendar, truly. I'm Jana, the exec producer of Little Things, and tonight I'm taking the team with me on my monthly payday slay date. There's nothing quite like outsourcing the cooking, but now Uber Eats is helping us treat ourselves and have a hot night out with the Dine Out feature. And it turns out I won't be blowing the entire paycheck for once, because there's discounts and in-venue offers available this October at all my fave restaurants. Thanks to Uber Eats for making this episode of Little Things possible.
So, I kind of want to get your thoughts on something fun. And it's about a conversation that's come up a bunch recently about whether or not your partner should be your best friend, whether or not we consider like romantic partners our best friend, or that they should have a different place within like the scope of your life and the roles within it. So I want to share this video with you from Inherited Pod with Hannah Ferguson. This is her point of view.
I really dislike when people say their partner, their romantic partner, is their best friend.
I was going to ask you this. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's so interesting.
Well,
I like this taboo of yours.
I get it. I get that it's a taboo opinion because I do understand why. I'm not saying there that your partner can't be the closest person in your life.
Yeah.
Because I think mine is the closest person in my life. But I think the term friendship, I think a friendship should also be at the crux of every good romantic relationship. But I think best friends, there's no sexual contract there. There's no expectation of touch. There's no expectation of flirting or courting or anything romantic in that.
What do you think? I mean, obviously everyone welcome to their own opinion. Yeah. I think it sparked a lot of interesting conversation. What do you think?
Yeah, I quite like that definition of friendship as someone who's just with you in the messiness of whatever you're going through or whatever is going on in your life with no strings. Of course, I come at it from a much more, or like just like a different kind of like lens of the expectations that we still do have within friendships that do still kind of go unspoken, right? In terms of the support that we give each other. There is still strings attached to that, in terms of that it's expected that it's mutual, right? That it goes two ways rather than just the one. Or that for some folks, they do introduce like sex within their friendship, and that's, negotiated between them. So I think I kind of sit with a bit more of like a looser definition of friendship in that way. But I do resonate with the idea of like friendship being the crux of any good romantic relationship. And that it's one of the many relationships that we have with a romantic partner, that you have your relationship as friends, as lovers, as co-parents, as people who, travel together, live together, whatever else. That there are these many different relationships happening within the same relationship, happening within the one relationship. And that they all kind of interplay with each other. But that, I always advocate for a bit more of like an open kind of open in the sense of your friendships can be like whatever you want them to be insofar as you're willing to ask for it.
That's interesting too. Yeah, we don't have to have such linear kind of lines around what a friendship looks like, as long as everyone's consenting to those boundaries and what that looks like. I think for me, like, I think probably what it immediately draws up is that I do resonate with the idea that like so first of all, agree, partners, like every relationship that you have, whether it's like your relationship with your granny, your friends, whoever, there's expectation. There's no strings relationship in your life. And I definitely don't think like the intimate side and them wanting something from you changes whether or not they can be a best friend to you. What I think the conversation draws up as well for me is that like your partner can't be everything to you at all times. And I think we're very much like in a place now that's very different societally to where we were, which was around like obviously child rearing was done by like a community of people before, and now we're very much in our like quote unquote nuclear families, and like partners have to pick up so much of the load to like develop each other, work together on everything, and also be a best friend. I like the idea of tapping back into like a broader spectrum of people who support you. I think it's just hard when we're so disconnected, and I think it's hard for people to like try and navigate who those different people are and what they bring to the table.
I think it's often also just easiest because we have a lot more cultural reinforcement that your romantic relationship should be the most important,
your
pinnacle.
everything.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like cultural reinforcement of that's just how you should do things. And that it feels a lot easier because there's that permissioning of like, this is the person who I tell all my deep, dark secrets to, that I take my clothes off with, that I raise kids with. So there's a commitment like that's that we talk about, right, usually, and that we negotiate. Whereas we don't necessarily have that with any other relationships in our lives, like friendships. We don't necessarily have a framework for like, how do we deepen our friendship, you know? Or like, how do I support you better as a friend? Or how do we navigate friendship breakups, you know, when that inevitably happens? That we have a lot more structure and language around how to do these things in romantic relationships, and that it's, socially okay to do it. But in the context of friendships, it feels just awkward to do so, you know, or it just feels like harder to kind of break that ice like making it a more meaningful relationship.
I find it really interesting as to why people find the need to rank their relationships in that way anyway, as to like who's the most important in their life.
Yeah, and I think it can be a little bit chicken or egg about it too, whether it's something that we learn to do versus something that we are choosing to actively do.
MySpace has a lot to answer for.
Exactly.
With the top friends thing, I still get like hives thinking about.
Yeah, that there's just like something, even in the languaging of like best friend, that there's one who also just sits on the top over everyone else. The need to kind of put, some sort of hierarchy around it. That, we do often have that romantic partner who sits at the top, and then like, you know, all of your other relationships sit underneath that. And I'm like very much for the approach of like horizontalizing a lot, like just flattening that. Totally, because like the truth is that they're all morally neutral. Like they're all just relationships. We assign the meaning to them. We make it important by choosing how we show up, or choosing like how much time and effort we dedicate to them.
Yeah. I feel like I was actually talking to my sister about this the other day, about how I feel like different levels of safe with different people. And I was like, I went back home to my parents and was with my sisters and stuff as well. And I was like, I think it's like a primal thing that when like the pack of griffins, and it is a pack, are all together, it feels like there's a level of safety that it's a different kind of safety than I have with like my friends or my partner or whatever. And what is that thing? And it's like you can only get that in certain contexts. And I only just realized that.
Noticing how much weight we give that, because I think that's such an important thing to have in any relationship. But for a lot of people, where the family sits on that hierarchy might sit still a little bit lower than, say, like the romantic partner, right? And like how much value we still give that, even though it's this beautiful thing for you, that other people like just kind of might overlook that.
When you encourage people to kind of look at their relationships across a spectrum and in a more flat, less hierarchical ranking system, how would you encourage people to think about that and actually do that in practice?
Yeah, it's this course, the therapist answer is like self-reflection around that.
Get your journal out.
Obviously, in terms of the like, yeah, what are my expectations? What am I asking for from this romantic relationship? Is that something we've negotiated between each other? Are there things that I could ask for or share the load across other relationships in my life, right? Because for a lot of people, like the romantic partner is the only person they might share deep, dark secrets with, have new experiences with, or really like build, like create a goal around building a life together. And that these are things that are always kind of accessible across any relationship that you have.
And people bring up different perspectives.
Like what I was saying about friendship is that you can still have these conversations about like how we're going to deepen our friendship. You know, what's a new level of intimacy that we can unlock? And that's something like a conversation I had with a friend literally just earlier this week of like, what's a new experience we can have together? Because it feels just kind of like we're just coasting, you know, we're just hanging out, you know, might have that check-in about it. I had that same check-in with that same friend of just like, you know, like how are we showing up for each other? How's it been for the last like month or so?
Oh my gosh, you're opening yourself up to so much feedback.
Yeah,
and sometimes I'm just
it's really
like,
nice because words of affirmation, right? Everyone's just like, you're so good at this. This was so lovely when you did this, and I'm like, yes, tell me more. You know, and I really enjoy that. But it's part of this. It helps that this particular friend is also a therapist, so there's that like, we get what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. You know,
why do you feel like people feel so triggered by someone having an opinion that their romantic partner doesn't have to be their best friend? Why does it matter to people so much?
Yeah, I think it opens it up to, or how we receive it is this part of someone is saying that we're doing it wrong, or that's how we take it, because that's what they articulate and that's what they believe, or at least that's what they're saying. So we can take that quite personally because it might, like, it hits a nerve saying that we might not be doing it in the right way, right? And I think that's something that comes up in a lot of non-monogamy conversations as well, where it's like even just me educating about that non-monogamy exists and explaining what it is in terms of like a 101, that there still can be a lot of pushback. And what I notice in a lot of those conversations, it's often people like being really pressed about that they could have made different choices in their life.
Oh.
You know? And that it didn't have to be this one particular way, where, of course, a lot of the couples that I work with, that they're, you know, 30 years down the track, really resentful and bitter about their relationship, and trying to find their way back to each other, that they could have chose differently, or that they could have asked for what they wanted instead of assuming and sacrificing something. Right, so it's this, it opens up this door to like there's other things that are possible, and that can scare a lot of people. You know,
because it's like, I didn't get that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling threatened that you do.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, right, that we didn't have the opportunity because we didn't know, we didn't have the resources, because for whatever reason. And that can, really press a nerve of like, then what, I'm just stuck in this relationship like this, where my partner is just like the way that it is right now. And that can feel quite destabilizing or just challenging to hear. And that's where I often go with hearing a lot of this pushback in terms of when anyone shares about how relationships should be, and coming from a place of like authority about it, you know, saying that this is something that works for them and should work for you, that can be hard for anyone to hear. Even for me as a therapist, I'm like, no, don't tell me that. Like, don't tell me what to do.
It's very freeing to have this chat with you and kind of like zoom out a little bit about the confines and constructs that we are placing on ourselves and that society has placed on us, and we don't even really take it in. We've spoken so much about all of this. What I want to know is like, what do you think all these different relationship trends tell us about how we view and show up in relationships in 2025?
Yeah, I think with the TikTokification of like relationships at the moment, I see a lot more people getting a lot more overwhelmed and confused about what is right and what they should do and what is healthy and what is toxic and everything in between. And that because there is just like so much, like a massive information at like hyper speed that we're just consuming about how relationships should be, that it's like just like this overarching sense of like confusion about what we actually, like what's actually right for us. So I think something that I see play out in sessions is that like folks feel this like crushing pressure about on a date, I have to be fun, cool, healed enough to date. I have to love myself. This should be really easy and this should flow and this should have like such great, powerful sexual chemistry. And like this long list of things that we should be doing. And we get to a point of like being really overwhelmed by it and freezing or opting out of it or being really in our heads about it. And I think that's a like really unfortunate side effect of a lot of this just like content that we're consuming about how we should do relationships, that we're then kind of like freaking out about what to do and get stuck in our heads about it. And then, then we like miss this opportunity to show up just as ourselves.
What advice do you give people if they're kind of stuck in that doom scroll relationship hole?
I'm a big advocate in like getting some breathing room and space from it, you know, to discern what is actually cultural programming and what is just noise and what is actually your voice and what is actually your want in that. So that can literally be like just taking a break from that kind of content and just kind of tuning into what feels like a yes, I really want this for you versus a no, this isn't right for me. Because then it becomes like less about following the script, am I doing it right? And more about like, does this feel right for me when we connect on a date? You know, am I excited by it? Do I feel heard and understood by you? All of these things. It changes the question. It means that we can love and be loved just for ourselves rather than how well we play a role, you know? And yeah, I think practically just having some space from that is important.
And a reminder that it's only like a 30-second window into someone's like relationship, and what that actually, how that actually plays out, we'll never know. So Sel, we've chatted at length and you've shared so much insight and expertise in your role about relationship dynamics and standard setting. I kind of want to know though, what's your personal little thing?
Yeah, my little thing that I've been trialing out lately has been sending a cute little text to people that I'm keen to be friends with and literally just saying like, hey, I think you're cool. Would you like to be friends? And I take that out of the playbook of like many kids, right, who on any playground would say like, hey, cool shirt, you know, want to be friends? And yeah, I like trialing that out, and that's been really fun and really surprising, but also like this really just low stakes way of saying, hey, this is something I want, this is something I'm keen for. If you're keen for, great, let's do something. If not, all good, no worries, you know? Yeah.
I love it. I love the idea of just like putting yourself out there and being like, hey, let's be friends via a cute little text message. I also think text feels less intimidating than like physically just walking up to someone in the street.
Yeah.
We've covered lots of ground. It's been really fun. I know you're going to look up Nara Smith at length after this for sure.
Definitely.
But thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been so much fun.
Thanks to Uber Eats for making this episode of Little Things possible. Head to your Uber Eats app immediately, if not sooner, for huge discounts and offers at all your fave venues this October.